I don't care who you are. Get back to the end of the line. Ling Han spoke coldly. Ha! The young man laughed raucously, as if he had heard the greatest joke in the world. He shook his head. You don't know who I am? I am Jin Wuxiang. My elder brother is Jin Wuji. Jin Wuji, that was one of the strongest competitors in this round of the Dayuan tournament. No wonder this guy was so arrogant. As a young master of the Jin clan, and with a very powerful elder brother, he did have the right to behave recklessly. Unfortunately, the one he had encountered now was Ling Han. Who cares if you're Jin Wuxiang or Jin Wuji? Whoever you are, get back to the end of the line. Ling Han gave an impatient wave of his hand. The smile on Jin Wuxiang's disappeared, replaced by an angered expression. After this brat found out who he was, he still dared to talk back to him? He gave a humph and said, "It is beneath me to lower myself to the level of a minor character like you." He turned back around and was about to begin the registration process. Get lost. Ling Han stretched out a hand, took hold of Jin Wuxiang's shoulder, pulled back, and shua, the guy was flung out of the line. Peng! He crashed into the wall and slid down with a groan. He immediately grimaced in pain. Young Master Wuxiang! The four men in black hurried forward to help Jin Wuxiang up. Yet Ling Han did not even afford him a glance, and said, I would like to register. When he looked at the man responsible for registering the participants, a faintly surprised expression appeared on his face, because this ordinary-looking old man was actually an elite martial artist in Gushing Spring Tier. Bastard, you actually dare to make a move against me, and still want to pretend that nothing has happened? Jin Wuxiang shoved away the four robust men and strode forwards, his eyes spitting fire. He was the one and only sixth young master of the Jin clan and the younger brother of Jin Wuji, yet someone actually dared to disrespect him. Get lost, Ling Han said coldly. Who do you think you are, to actually be so bold to disrespect me? Jin Wuxiang said furiously, stretching out a hand to take hold of Ling Han. Why are you making a racket here? The old man who was in charge of registering the participants said, very displeased. Old guy, you dare interfere with my business? Jin Wuxiang immediately gave a humph and glared at the old man. He was used to being arrogant, plus he was currently furious, and thus he did not give his actions a second thought. Ling Han could not help shaking his head internally. This guy really was seeking his own demise. Hey, every generation of the Jin clan is weaker than the last. The brats now are becoming more and more thoughtless. The old man sighed. He stretched out his right hand and gave it a flick. Peng! A Herculean strength rushed forth, and Jin Wuxiang directly flew out of the registration room due to the resulting shockwave. When the old man made a move, everyone finally realized in shock that this was actually a powerful elite martial artist. All of their faces were filled with astonishment. Who would have thought that an old man who was in charge of recording and registering the participants would actually be an elite martial artist laying low? I know who this senior is. He's the chief butler of the royal house of the Dayuan king. What? The chief butler of the royal house of the Dayuan king? How come he's personally doing this kind of work? You ask me, but whom should I ask? Someone recognized the identity of this old man, immediately causing a bout of whispering amongst the witnesses. Meanwhile, Jin Wuxiang, who had intended to avenge himself, immediately became well-behaved. Although the Jin clan was powerful, it was nothing compared to the power of the royal house of the Dayuan king. No matter how arrogant and overbearing he was not a fool. He knew what kind of people he could trifle with, and what kind of people he shouldn't even think about trifling with. He quickly fled with his tail between his legs, followed by his 4 lackeys. After all, the registration deadline was the day after tomorrow, so there was no need for him to register today no matter what. However, Ling Han had become the target of his grudge. If it wasn't for his interference, there wouldn't have been any dispute about his cutting into the queue at all. Many thanks for your fair judgment, Senior, Ling Han said, raising his clasped hands in gratitude. This was an elite in Gushing Spring Tier, and compared to the current him, the old man was much, much more powerful. Additionally, he had already let go of the identity of his last life as a powerful warrior of Heaven Tier and the Alchemy Emperor. There was nothing inappropriate about addressing the old man Senior. The old man had a bit of a blurred vision, and he smiled at Ling Han and said, "To be able to break through to the element-gathering tier at such a young age, such talent is really promising. My 7th young mistress is about the same age as you, so there might be chances of a match there." When everyone heard this, they could not help the weird expressions plastered on their faces. Was this chief butler here to seek a prince consort for the royal house? However, it was impossible for a princess's marriage to be decided by a butler. At most, the chief butler could only be responsible for the first round of selections. Whether the candidate passed or not would still be decided by the Dayuan king. Even so, everyone sat up and took notice of Ling Han. To be able to gain the recognition of an elite gushing spring tier, this brat must have had some outstanding quality. Yet Ling Han pondered and recalled. 7th young mistress. Wasn't that Qi Zhan Tai, that young girl? He laughed loudly and said, "Many thanks for your recognition, senior, but we should complete the registration process first." This brat really was quite bold to actually dare reject the chief butler in this manner, yet the chief butler was all smiles. He was only under the command of the Dayuan king, to see if there were any outstanding geniuses in this round of the Dayuan tournament. It was definitely not possible that Ling Han would become the son-in-law of the royal house just because he had taken a fancy to him. "Good. Where are you from? How old are you? What is your cultivation level, and what is your name?" he asked. "I am Ling Han. I came from Grey Cloud Town. After the new year, I'll be 17, and I am currently in the 4th layer of element-gathering tier." Ling Han replied to each question with a smile. "1. Pooh!" The eyeballs of those who were close enough to hear his reply were in danger of popping out of their heads, as if they had seen some kind of ghost. Many of them had already seen that Ling Han was in element-gathering tier. Those who were not able to were clued into the fact by the words of the chief butler. But when they saw how young Ling Han was, they had all thought that he had just broken through. At most, he could only be at the peak period of the 1st layer of element-gathering tier. Yet Ling Han was shockingly in the 4th layer of element-gathering tier. A 17-year-old in the 4th layer of element-gathering tier. This was absolutely astonishing. Even for the genius that was the 4th prince, with the endless cultivation resources supplied by the royal house, had he managed to reach the 4th layer of element-gathering tier at 17 years old? Perhaps he had, but that was the farthest he could have ventured. With such a comparison, they could now easily see how freakishly talented Ling Han was. No wonder the chief butler wanted to enlist him as a prince consort candidate. Ling Han took out his proof of identification. This was something that every citizen of Rain Country would receive upon their birth. For those who did not have this kind of proof of identification, if they were discovered, they would either become slaves or would be forced to flee from the country. The chief butler only gave it a brief glance and then gave a plaque to Ling Han. This was the plaque that would allow Ling Han to participate in the Dayuan tournament that would be held 2 days after tomorrow. Usually, no one would dare to falsify their identity. This was because once you managed to squeeze into the top 50, there would be a second check to verify your identity. If it was discovered that anyone had dared to falsify their identity, this was definitely a very heavy crime. The chief butler was very interested in Ling Han, and kept chatting with him about ordinary daily life. He really seemed as if he intended to marry off his own daughter to Ling Han. Although everyone else was starting to feel impatient, no one dared to rush him in any way. Even without his esteemed position as the chief butler of the royal house of the Dayuan king, as an elite martial artist in Gushing Spring tier, he was undeniably a powerful presence within the nearest 1,000 miles. It wasn't until Ling Han finally voiced his intention to leave of his own accord that the chief butler ended the conversation. Yet he still told Ling Han that if he was free, he was welcome to visit the royal house of the Dayuan king, which caused everyone else to turn red-eyed with envy. This was the same as giving a protective charm to Ling Han, who would dare make a move against him now.